Is the slide visible to everybody?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. So in the last class, we had talked about different TCP retransmission scenarios. So we had seen the scenario where, if some acknowledgement is also lost, but still, data transmission is not hampered in between because of cumulative acknowledgements. Today we are going to talk about fast retransmit. Okay, so what is this concept? All right, so let's see the example that is given here. So we have a packet being transferred which is having a sequence number of 92, and it is of size 8 bytes. And then we send the next sequence number, that is 100 with 20 bytes of data, which unfortunately could not reach the host. Okay, so correspondingly, we have also sent a few more packets after that. Now, from the host side, whatever packets it is receiving, it is actually sending out the corresponding acknowledgements. Okay. Now look at the acknowledgements here. So as mentioned earlier also, so what's happening here is that in the first case here, in the first case, when the first packet is being received at the hosts B, that is with sequence number 92, then it is sending an acknowledgement asking for the next sequence of data that it is actually expecting. Okay, so that is the ACK. So the ACK sequence number should be equal to 100. Okay, so it is sending this particular acknowledgement. So now, next time when all the packets are being received, it will send out the acknowledgement for the packet that it is actually expecting, and it is in this case is going to expect this packet, that is packet with sequence number of 100. Okay, so when three duplicate acknowledgements are received at any particular host, so in that case, in case of TCP, the host understands that there has been a lost segment. Okay, so it starts retransmission. So if you receive three duplicate acknowledgements before the timeout, in case of TCP, then it considers that there has to be a loss of segments, and thus it understands that it has to now retransmit the segment. So what it does, it retransmits this segment with sequence number of 100. Okay, so this is known as fast retransmit in case of TCP. All right. Okay, so here it's given if sender receives three additional acknowledgements for the same data, that means triple duplicate acknowledgements, then what the sender does, it resends the unacknowledged segment with the smallest sequence number. All right. So that is why. So why does it do it? Because it is likely that if it is receiving three duplicate acknowledgements, then it is likely that the unacknowledged segment is probably lost. Okay, so there's no need to wait for the timeout. Simply just retransmit it again. So this is a feature of TCP. This is known as fast retransmit. All right. So after all the retransmissions, we are going to look at connection oriented transport, okay, in TCP. So first thing is flow control. So when we had talked about TCP, we had talked about several features that TCP provides. One of the features was also flow control. Okay. So this is what the protocol stack will look like at the receiver side, right? So you have the network layer here. This is the transport layer with the TCP code, the socket and the receiver buffers, and then you have the application process in the application layer. All right. So now how the flow control will work. All right. So we have to see. So in general, what happens from sender, some data comes, then the network layer. So this is that. Okay. Then it goes to the network layer in the form of IP datagram. So now the payload of this will be sent into the TCP socket buffers. Okay, in the transport layer. All right. So that is basically the segment that you are sending over, and through the socket, it goes to the corresponding application layer process. All right. So yeah, so here in the application layer, from that particular segment, the actual data, that is the message, is now reaching the particular application process. Okay. So what is the situation of flow control? Okay. Now suppose in this scenario, there's packets which are basically going from the lower layers to the network layer, and then it is going above, right? So what if the number of packets that are delivered from the network layer side to the transport layer is too much? That means it is delivering much faster than um, how much application layer process can actually remove from the socket layer buffer. Okay, so here if you see the application layer, the process is actually removing the data from the socket, right? That is, whatever the data, whatever the segment is being received at the transport layer side, from there it is basically sending it to the socket. Correspondingly, from the socket, the message is being extracted and sent over to the application layer process, right? Now, if the sending of this data from the network layer is too high, I mean too fast as compared to how it is being extracted by the application layer process, then there will be too much of overflow of information to the process, right? So that is the issue of flow control. So in this scenario, we will say that maybe it is getting overflowed, right? So what will happen if this is basically the scenario? So we do have receiver buffers here. We know that, in this transport layer socket, we do have receiver buffers also here. Okay, so this size of the receiver buffer is basically sent in the header, segment header, okay, to the to the sender side. Okay, so the sender will be informed that this is the receiver window size. That means this is the amount of data that you can, that the receiver side can actually handle at this point. So do not send much more than this. Okay, so with this, the flow of data to the particular receiver is actually controlled. So this is the receive window field here in the header. So this will be the number of bytes that the receiver is actually willing to accept. And with this particular field, the value in this field is actually going to determine that I mean, is actually going to ensure that flow control happens between a sender and a receiver. Okay. So what happens in case of flow control? If we see that with the help of this receive window field, the receiver side basically sends the size of the receiver buffer, and therefore with that information, the receiver basically controls the sender by saying that, this is the size of the buffer, and you can send only this much of data. So this is how the receiver is basically controlling the sender, such that the sender does not overflow the receiver's buffer by transmitting too much of data too fast. Okay, so this is what flow control is. All right. Now, if we have to see to it how it works out. So suppose this is the buffer size. Okay, this is the corresponding socket, and then you have the application process. Okay, if you are unable to see my mouse, please let me know, because I'm assuming that you are able to see my mouse on the screen. Okay, when I'm trying to show you. Okay. So suppose that we do have a buffer here. So now there is some data that is buffered data, and there is some free buffer space. Okay, that means some data that has just been received, which has not been sent to the application layer process yet, and there is some free space where some extra data that is coming through the lower layers that can actually be saved. Okay, so this particular space, okay, after the receive buffer size ends, until the free buffer space. So this entire free buffer space is known as the receive window, that is denoted as RWND. Okay, so this available space is known as the receive window, and the total size is the receive buffer. Okay, total buffer size is denoted as receive buffer. Okay, in general, it can be set when you are setting the sockets, when you are basically declaring the sockets, then there itself you can give in the socket options as to what is the size of the receive buffer. By default, it is 4096 bytes. Okay. In some operating systems, the receive buffer can be adjusted automatically depending upon how much the data is coming. Okay. Now, what will happen from the sender side? Okay, so sender will receive the receive window value. Okay, and depending upon that, it will limit the amount of data that it will send to the receiver side. Okay, what will it do? It will simply guarantee that the receive buffer is not going to overload. Okay, so this is how the flow control basically works in case of TCP. And here, as I had shown earlier, so this is the receive window field. Okay, this is the receive window field, which is basically containing the number of bytes that the receiver is willing to accept. Okay, so this is the TCP segment format. Now let's do the TCP connection management here. So what have we learned until now? Okay, we know that TCP is a connection-oriented protocol. So therefore, before it starts transmitting any data, first thing it has to do is to establish a connection between the sender and the receiver. And this entire method of establishing the connection, this is known as handshake. Okay, so first some data is exchanged between the sender and receiver, that is known as handshake. Then after the both the teams actually agree to establish the connection, then the actual transmission of data happens. Okay, so let's see this. Let's see now what will happen if we just have a two-way handshake. So we had done it in the previous chapters when we had just started talking about what is TCP and all. So there also I had asked the same question and someone had actually given me the right answer about this, that if we do not have a two-way handshake, then what is going to happen? Okay, but still let us just take a look at it. What is going to happen if we simply have a two-way handshake instead of a three-way handshake? Okay, so in the two-way handshake, it will simply be like this, that just the sender side would simply ask for a connection. That means it will simply request for a connection to the server side. The server side, if it agrees, it will simply establish the connection and then acknowledge this connection to the sender side again. And once the sender side gets this acknowledgement, it will also understand that okay, the connection has been established. It really looks good here that you are basically reducing on one more data transmission. But what can be the problems which may lead to any issues if we have two-way handshake in the network? Okay, so first thing is that there is variable delay in the network. So by the time you are actually reaching, I mean getting this information that the server has also agreed to establish a connection. Okay, maybe the sender side will probably lose out on the time for which it is waiting, right? So that is one thing. Then the retransmitted messages. So suppose there is a message loss, okay, from the sender side to the receiver side. So when it was trying to request for a connection, then again it will simply retransmit that message again and again. Okay, now imagine a situation that maybe the sender is thinking that its packet has lost, request packet has lost, but the at the receiver side, maybe that packet has actually received. So it will say that it has established a connection for a particular connection X. but the sender actually does not know about it, so it starts retransmitting it again, and then again the same request for connection establishment goes to the receiver side. Okay, so that is also one more issue. Of course, we will have message reordering problem, and the one thing that is the biggest problem is that the sender and receiver, they do not know anything about each other. So whatever happens to the other side, it is the sender side or the receiver side, that is the one at the opposite side, is totally unaware of whatever is happening. Okay, so there can be issues of retransmissions, there can be issues of delays, a lot of delays, there can be issues of message loss. Okay, and essentially there will be issues of how the entire transmission is going on. All right, so these are the problems that a two-way handshake brings in. So we are going to just see some two-way handshake scenarios. So first is just a request connection uh, from the sender side to the server side, client side to the server side. So once the server receives this connection, it just establishes the connection and then sends the acknowledgement to the client side. The client side, once it receives this establishment acknowledgement, it sends the actual data to the server side. Once that is accepted or received at the server side, it accepts the data and sends the corresponding acknowledgement to the client side. Okay, so this is a very ideal way that everything worked well and the connection X completes. All right. Now let's see other scenarios that can happen. So again, a connection request was made, then it was accepted. Now, once this is done, after that, the client simply terminates. Okay, connection X is complete, and the server forgets the that there was any connection that was there. Okay, now what can happen? Suppose this establishment request, after it reaches the server side, and the server sends the acknowledgement of the establishment to the sender. Now, what if before the acknowledgement is received at the client side, the timeout actually goes off? So once the timeout goes off, then what what the client will do, the client will basically retransmit the connection request again. All right. So this packet is now transmitted through the medium from the client side. Now so now what happens? Before this packet actually reaches the server side, in between what happened is the connection request was established, and then the client simply just after establishing the connection, just simply terminated, and the server also simply forgot the connection that was made with X, because the connection has now completed. Okay, but there was a packet in flight, which was the request packet that was sent by the client side. So this in-flight packet, when it reaches the server side, the server then again gets a request for this particular connection, right? So what the server will do, server actually does not remember anything. If you remember, that server actually does not remember the state. Okay, what was happening, what has happened earlier. So what will the server do? Server can actually again establish a connection with no one, basically, because the client side is not waiting for the connection establishment, right? So this is going to cause an issue. Okay, so this is, yeah, so this is going to happen in case of a two-way handshake scenario. All right, so the client is not waiting for the server side. Okay, although the server, once it reaches the request for connection, it will simply establish the connection, but there will not be a client to actually receive that established connection request. So similarly, what can happen? Okay, so this is also also something similar what we have already done right now. So there was a timeout and then the connection request was sent. Okay. Now again, after this also, suppose, before the response could actually come out, there was a timeout and then again there was a retransmit of data, the next data that was done after this data was, transferred. Okay. So suppose there is a request connection establishment, then it was acknowledged. Now before that there was a retransmit that has happened. Now once the connection was actually established and it was acknowledged to the client side, it sent the corresponding data. Okay. Now this data is now accepted. Now before the acknowledgement could actually receive for this particular data, what the um, client had done is that it had to retransmit the data. Okay. So now again the same scenario happens. Although the data has actually correctly reached the server side, but because there is a retransmit in flight, retransmit connection request in flight, and also retransmit data request in flight. So what will happen? The next time again it will retransmit this request connection will reach the server side. It will establish the connection, and then after that it will also receive the next data. Okay, that was there, even though there's no client that is remaining here because the connection is complete by now. All right, so the server is basically half, this connection is basically half open. The server is open, but the client side has closed its connection. So this is going to be an issue in case of um, two-way handshake scenarios, and you will also get a problem of duplicate data in this case. All right. So which is why we come up with the three-way handshake scenario. Okay. So how do we write the client state and the server state? So in the client state, we write this, that is we first create the socket. Okay. And on the server state also, we first create the socket with the port numbers. All right. So let's see how it works out. So the first thing that happens in a three-way handshake is that, so first you listen to the network. Okay. So that means first the client socket dot connect, server name and server port. Okay. That is basically the initialization of the connection request. Okay. So what's happening here? Choose the initial sequence number, and suppose the initial sequence number is X, and send the TCP sign message SYN. If you remember in the last class, we had this flag bit sign in the header of the segment from the sender side. Okay, so this is what the sign message means. It is basically trying to send a message, a connection request during a connection request message to the sender, from the sender side to the receiver side. This sign bit is set to 1. Okay, so the sign bit, as you can see for the connection request, the sign bit is set to 1, and then initial data is sent with sequence number X. Now this is the server state. Server is also listening for any requests to come, right? So what will the server do? Once the server basically receives this data with sign bit equals to 1, what it will do? It will choose some sequence number for the segment that it will send. So suppose that sequence number is Y here, and then it will, hello, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So from the server side, what it will do is it will first select a sequence number, that is sequence number Y here, and then it will send a sign acknowledgement, okay, which is known as the sign ACK message, and then it is basically acknowledging the sign statement, right? So that means it is basically saying that okay, the connection is now established. Okay, so once the sign bit is received, it is basically sending out the response, setting the sign bit equals to 1, sequence number equals to Y, acknowledgement bit is also equals to 1, and acknowledgement number is always what? The one that is being expected, right? The server is expecting what is the server expecting as the next bit. So that is x plus 1 here, because the previous message had the sequence number of x. Okay. So now once the established connection request acknowledgement has come back from the server side to the client side, at that point, what will happen at the sender side, that is at the client side, once it receives the SINAC of X, the data that it had sent, then it basically indicates that the server is basically ready to establish the connection between the client and the server. That means the server is live. It will send an acknowledgement for SINAC, and this segment may contain the client to server data. So that is what? First you establish the connection, then you send the data. So that is here what the client side is basically doing. It is actually acknowledging that it has actually received the SINAC from the server side using the acknowledgement bit equals to 1, and acknowledgement number is equal to the sequence number of the data that it is expecting next. So sequence number Y was sent from the sender side, server side. So the acknowledgement number here would be Y plus 1. All right. So what it says when it reaches the server side, it will say that the client has basically received the acknowledgement number Y, and it indicates that the client is also open for the communication. So with this, what we get to know, the client is asking the server that whether you are open for a connection or not. Once the client sends a green signal to that by using the sign bit equals to 1, and giving the SINAC with it. So once it gives out the SINAC, the client will get to know that the server is open for connection or live for connection. And then the client side will basically send an acknowledgement to the server side saying that I am also live for the connection. So with this, what happens? You have the listen, you have the sign sent, and you have the establishment. So connection is established here from the server side to the client side, and here at the server state you have the listen, you have the sign received, and then you have the connection established from the client side to the server side. Okay, so this is basically a confirmation to both the sides that both of them are now live and they can actually transmit data. All right, so this is what our three-way handshake is. So what we saw just now is that how to establish a connection between two entities in a TCP connection. Now we also have to close a connection after the communication is done, right? So what do they do? How the closing is done? So the client and server, both of them close their own side of connection, and once they close the connection, they simply send a TCP segment with the finish bit equals to 1, which is known as the FIN bit. If you remember in the header, we had done in the last class that we do have the FIN bit in the header field of the segment. So there in the FIN, in this basic FIN bit variable is set to basically 1. Okay, so this segment is transferred once one of the sides close their connection. So whichever side receives this FIN bit, okay, the segment with the FIN bit equals to 1, they have to respond with an acknowledgement. Okay, so on receiving this one, they will also acknowledge that, okay, I have received your FIN bit, so now I am also closing my connection. So that's how it is done in case of a TCP connection. So what happens in case of TCP? So now if we have to just imagine the scenario, if the client side has sent some data and with the TCP connection, the server side receives that data and it wants to close the connection, it will simply send a segment with the FIN bit equals to 1 saying that, okay, the connection is now closed, and then the client side will also acknowledge its closing of the connection by sending a segment with FIN bit equals to 1. It can happen the other way around also. So let's get to the next part, that is TCP congestion. That is, first of all, let's start with what is congestion control. Then we will get to what is TCP congestion control, which is a very important topic. So what is congestion control? Let's first start with that. Okay. So what do we mean by congestion? So we know this term is basically, very common term that we use in traffic, and we say that okay, it is a very congested road. That just means that too much traffic is there in that road. So in case of networks also, when we are talking about congestion in the network, so that means too much packets are being transferred over that medium, which is leading to an overall delay in the reception of the packet at the receiver side. Okay, so it can lead to either delay or packet loss, depending upon if there is a buffer overflow at the routers, or the timeout is gone. Okay, so it will lead to either long delays or it will lead to packet loss. Okay. So yes, one thing that you need to always remember is that flow control and congestion control, they are very different concepts. Okay, what happens in flow control? It is basically between one sender and one receiver. Okay, so you are in flow control, you are controlling the flow from a given sender to a particular receiver, and the receiver is controlling or informing the sender that how much it can actually receive from that particular sender. So it is between two entities. Okay. Now, when it comes to congestion, it can happen that because of some guy in the network, completely different people who are not even related to that, they are um basically facing challenges, or they are losing packets, or they are getting delays. Okay, so let me give you an example here. See, um, look at this router here. It is having so many connections. Okay, we have four hosts here. Now it can happen that host A and some other host here, these two want to communicate with each other. All right, so they can easily transmit data over the over this particular router, and then they can get this data at the receiver side. But what happens if one of the hosts, the other host, suppose host B is sending a lot of data for some other host here. Okay, so in that case, since they are going through the same router, the router will definitely be overwhelmed with a lot of data that is coming from some other guy. Excuse me. So the router is basically getting overwhelmed, its buffer is getting filled, and once the buffer overflow happens at the router side, it will basically drop the packets, or and all the other packets which are actually in the buffer, they will also get a lot of delay with that. Okay, so even though host A is not sending too much packets, but the receiver here at this end is going to receive a lot of delay or packet loss because of some other host which is using the common connection here. All right, so this is what congestion is in case of TCP. Sorry, in case of the network. Okay, we will see how congestion is controlled in case of TCP. So I will. So these are basically some example scenarios showing that if you have infinite buffer in the router, then you will not have any problem if any host sends a lot of data. Now this is also a case by case kind of a scenario. So suppose there is some data that is being sent from host A's side to the other side that I was talking to you about. Now, if there is some other host B which is sending the data to the other one, and one of them sends a lot of data, so in that case also, if we have infinite buffer at the router's side, then there is not going to be a problem. Okay. Now, I will not get into all these scenarios right now. You can read it out, because I have already told you that what will happen if we have a finite buffer at the router side, and because of any other connection, if it is sending a lot of data, then there will be a lot of packet loss and delay. Okay, so I'm not getting into the different scenarios. What I'm going to get into is I will get into the TCP congestion control part. Okay, So you can just take a look at this after the class. I will send this presentation. I will upload the presentation in Teams itself. Okay. So, all right. Just simply examples with routers. So what are the basic costs of congestion? So if congestion happens in your scenario, then what can you expect? First is you cannot expect the throughput to ever exceed out of the capacity of your network. Then the delay will increase as your network capacity is approached. So if you can send the data as much as the network capacity um, can actually handle, so the delay will probably, actually keep increasing. Now there will be, of course, the loss or transmission, that will the packet loss or packet retransmission will decreases if you basically try to reach the effective throughput. Okay. Let's get to this one. So let's see if you have congestion in your network. Okay. So in flow control, what we were doing, the receiver side was telling the sender side that, there is no space in my buffer. Please don't send further packets. That's how the flow control was being done. But here, the receiver side actually does not know that why this problem is happening, why it is receiving packets which are delayed, why it is basically not receiving packets at all. Okay. And the sender also does not know that what's happening in between. All right. So in this scenario, it becomes very necessary that, the sender, the basically the hosts which are in the network, they should know that somehow the network is getting congested. So please control your transmissions. Okay, that's the information that needs to be told to all the hosts which are basically using the same network. Okay. So now, to have this end-to-end network congestion control between one host to another host, there are various approaches that can be considered. Okay, so one can basically infer from the amount of packet loss that is happening or the amount of delay that is being received in receiving the packets. Okay, so with that, one can infer that, okay, maybe the network is getting congested. Okay, so as your delay keeps increasing or as you just have more and more retransmissions or basically packet loss. So in that case, you will understand or the host can understand that, okay, maybe there is a congestion in the network. So then it will take some steps to avoid it. That is one way. Another way is that once the network, so in this network, we have several routers here, right? So once the router actually feels that it is getting overwhelmed with the number of packets that are receiving it or that are reaching this particular router, so the router can itself probably send a feedback. Okay. So there is in general no explicit feedback being sent from the network, but let's see how it works out if we want to send it. Okay. So let's see what is the approach that TCP takes. Now, I just told you that, there can be a scenario that you check the delay and check the acknowledgement and, check the delay and check the number of retransmissions. And then you will find out that, okay, maybe there is some delay, some congestion that is happening in the network. So this is the method that is used by TCP to actually find out that whether there is a congestion or not. TCP does not use any explicit information from the network to find out that, whether there is congestion or not. So routers are not going to give any information in case TCP is used as the transmission layer protocol. Okay, whereas in some other cases, the router can actually send a feedback to the hosts, corresponding hosts that, please do not overwhelm the network, okay, by sending some different types of packets. Okay. So this basically will show that, okay, there is some congestion. I am getting a lot of packets. Therefore, you need to reduce the amount of packets that you are sending. Okay. So this is how the network will actually tell the host. Okay. So there are ways like, choke packets, then there is back pressure. So these are different methods which are basically used by the routers to actually tell the client side, the host side, different connections which are connected to it, that it is getting overwhelmed with a large number of packets. Okay. So since here we are looking at TCP in this particular chapter, we will straight away dive into how TCP works out when congestion happens in its scenario. Right. So as okay, this is simply, we are sending the explicit congestion information. Let's get to right. So the congestion control method in case of TCP is known as AIMD, which is additive increase and multiplicative decrease protocol. Okay. So what happens in this case? What is the approach that is being used? The sender can increase the sending rate until packet loss occurs. And then once it finds out that, okay, some packet loss is probably happening, then it starts decreasing the sending rate. Okay. So this is the basic approach that is used in case of TCP. So how it works out? So this is how it looks like. So first there will be an increase in the sender's sending rate. Once, so as it sends more and more packets, at one point of time it will find out that, okay, there is probably some congestion that is happening. Once that happens, then it will reduce its sending rate. Okay, so that is why it is known as the additive increase and multiplicative decrease protocol. We'll see why additive and why multiplicative is happening. But the graph, as you can see, it is a sawtooth kind of a graph that comes out. So here it is why it is known as additive increase. Okay. So if you remember yesterday's class, I was talking about some features of TCP and I spoke about the fact that we have a message segment size, a maximum segment size in case of TCP. That means what should be the maximum size of the segment that can be transferred over the medium. Okay. So this is the maximum segment size that is that plays an important role in case of this AIMD protocol. So when we are talking about the additive increase part, what happens is that the sending rate is increased by 1 MSS or 1 maximum segment size every round trip time until there is a packet loss detected. Okay, so every time one acknowledgement is received from the receiver side to the sender that the segment was received successfully, then additively the sender side will keep increasing the number of segments it is sending at a time. Okay, so first one message, one MSS, then two MSS, like that it will keep increasing. Okay, now a packet loss is detected. Okay, so suppose it has detected packet loss at around 6 MSS. Okay, so then there is a multiplicative decrease. That means it will send now packets at the rate of half at each loss event. Okay, so it will just, if it was sending at 6, it will now send at 3. Okay, so this is how the additive increase and multiplicative decrease works in case of TCP congestion control. All right, so it is known as the sawtooth behavior, as I just told you. And it is nothing but, if you think about how this AIMD is working, it is nothing but simply probing the bandwidth. Okay, probing for the available bandwidth. If bandwidth is available, if there is no congestion in the network, then you send as much of messages as you want, right? As much as you can. But if there is not much bandwidth available, if the bandwidth, if the shared bandwidth is being used by others also, so in that case, you can reduce your rate of transmission. Okay, so it is also equivalent to probing for the bandwidth, this additive increase, and then you decrease it multiplicatively when you find out a loss event. Okay, so there are two variations of TCP in case of the congestion control protocols. One is TCP Reno and another is TCP Tahoe. Okay, so how does it differentiate? What is the difference in between the two? In case of multiplicative decrease in this phase, okay, for TCP Reno, the sending rate is cut into half on any loss that is detected by triple duplicate acknowledgements. We just saw that if we have 3 duplicate acknowledgements, then we infer that there has been a packet loss. So in case of TCP Reno, the loss is detected by triple duplicate acknowledgements, and then the sending rate of MSS is cut to half. Okay, so that is in TCP Reno. In case of TCP Tahoe, what happens is that the loss is detected by timeout. When the loss is detected by timeout, then we go back to one maximum segment size. We started with one MSS. Now, whenever there is a timeout, a loss detected by timeout, then the sending rate goes back to one MSS again. Okay, so this is the difference between these two types of protocols. Now, the question is that why should we use this AIMD protocol? Okay, so remember, we are basically looking at a scenario here where the sender and receiver are just closed from each other. They do not know anything about each other, right? So it is, and also we have such a distributed scenario. Okay, so because of such a distributed scenario that we are going to handle, we need an asynchronous algorithm like what AIMD can provide us. Also, it can optimize congested flow rates network wide, and it can have the desirable stability properties. Okay, so we'll see how it works out basically. So let's see how the congestion control works. Okay, so this is what we call as the congestion window or CWMD from the sender's side. Okay, so this is the sender sequence number space. We have the congestion window. So the green one is the last byte of data that was acknowledged. You can see here it is marked like that. Then these are the yellow ones. These are the segments which are sent, but they have not acknowledged yet. And this is the last byte of data that has been sent, the last segment in yellow in color. That is the last byte of data that was sent. The rest of it is, the space is available, but it has not been used yet. Okay. So how will the sender limit its transmission? So the congestion window should be, you know, greater than or equal to, the last byte sent minus last byte of acknowledged packet or acknowledged segment. Okay, so last byte sent minus last byte acknowledged is less than or equals to the congestion window. Okay, so congestion window can basically be dynamically adjusted in response to whatever the network is facing in terms of congestion. Okay. So now how the sender will actually behave. So first you send CWND bytes. Okay, so you can roughly send congestion window bytes and then wait for the round trip time for acknowledgements. Okay, if you have received the acknowledgement, then you send more bytes of data. The rate of this transmission is going to be congestion window divided by RTT bytes per second. All right. Now slow start. Okay, so along with this, let's see how this entire congestion control works out. So first is the concept of TCP slow start. All right. So when the connection will begin, the increase, we increase the message segment transmission rate exponentially. Okay, so in TCP slow start, how it works out? You send one MSS, you receive the RTT, then you send two MSS, then you send four MSS. So exponentially, this rate keeps on increasing. Okay, so this is how TCP slow start works. Now, this will go on until you have your first loss event. Okay, so you have the initial congestion window as 1 MSS. Now you are increasing the congestion window by double after every RTT. Okay. Now this is done when you basically receive an acknowledgement. You just simply double the congestion window and send that many MSS. So why it is called a slow start? You start with an initially slow rate of transmission and then you keep increasing exponentially faster. Okay, so this is what slow start is. Now from slow start, how do we avoid congestion? Okay, so when should this exponential increase of MSS or MSS transmission switch to linear? Okay, so the answer to this is that when the congestion window gets to half of its value before the timeout. Okay, so let's see how it works out. So we do have a threshold. Okay, SS thresh, which is a variable threshold. That means how much of data you are basically, how much of MSS you are basically going to transmit. Okay, so whenever there is a loss event, this threshold value is set to half of the congestion window, which was there just before the loss event. All right. So this is basically in case of TCP Reno. You know that in case of TCP Reno, what is the difference? That in case of TCP Reno, you will receive 3 duplicate acknowledgements and then you will understand that there is a packet loss. Okay, and you will make it to half of what it was earlier. Okay, whereas in case of TCP Tahoe, so you can see it. Yeah, somebody's mic is on. Please mute it for some time. So in case of TCP Reno, you can see that you are basically coming back to a congestion window size, which is half of the one which where the congestion was basically phased, right? So here the congestion, there was, sorry, the loss of packet was phased. So here the loss was phased. So it came to half of the value at which the loss was phased. So that is TCP Reno. And from then it is moving forward again. In case of TCP Tahoe, what will happen? Wherever you face the loss, it will come back to 1 MSS, right? So that's what the TCP Tahoe, this is how the TCP Tahoe is going to work out. Okay. All right. So you can check out these interactive sessions which are there by Kuros and Ross. So I've given this, I've kept this for, you can just look at some examples and do some exercises on this one, okay, because TCP congestion control is a very important concept. All right, okay, so if we have to summarize TCP congestion control, so this is how it will work out. So you have the slow start state. Okay, so first is, you have the congestion window is equal to 1 MSS. Suppose you have the SS threshold value as 64 KB and you don't have any duplicate acknowledgements as of now. So that is 0. So this is the so slow start phase. If you receive a duplicate acknowledgement, your duplicate account counter increases unless and until it is becoming 3. So then that is again different for TCP Tahoe case. So anyways, you are increasing the counter here. Now, if you receive a new acknowledgement, then you increase your congestion window plus the MSS value. And of course, the duplicate count is equals to duplicate act count is 0. Okay. Now you can send the new segments as much as is allowed with respect to your congestion window. If there is a timeout, if you found that there is a timeout, then what you do? You decrease the threshold value as congestion window divided by 2. Congestion window becomes 1 MSS and the duplicate account becomes 0. So you retransmit the missing segment. Okay. Now, what if your congestion window becomes greater or equals to the SS threshold? Do not take any action. Simply go for the congestion avoidance state. Now here at this state, if you receive a new acknowledgement, you just change the congestion window value. How it is changed? CWNT plus MSS times MSS divided by the congestion window size. Your duplicate act count is still 0 and you transmit the new segments as allowed to you. And if you keep getting the duplicate acknowledgements, you just simply increase the duplicate act count. Okay. Now here, if you have a timeout, the threshold value is changed to half, congestion window is changed to 1 MSS, duplicate account is set to 0, and you retransmit the missing segment and go back to again this phase of slow start. Okay, so this is how your up to this part is working. Now you had been increasing the duplicate counts. Now once your duplicate count becomes 3, okay, once the duplicate act count becomes 3, then what is the action that is taken? The threshold value is set to congestion window by 2. Congestion window is set to the threshold plus 3, and then the missing segment is again retransmitted. Now, what is the next state that it goes to? It goes to the fast recovery state, where if you still receive a duplicate act, then your congestion window will, as earlier, it will change to congestion window plus MSS, and the transmission can happen as it was allowed. Okay. If it receives a new acknowledgement, then congestion window will be equal to the threshold value and the duplicate act count will be equals to 0. Now, if there is a timeout, then the threshold value is set to half of the congestion window. Congestion window is set to 1 and the duplicate act count is equal to 0. So that is when you retransmit the missing segment again and go to the slow start phase. Okay. Now, similarly, if you are at the slow start phase and then you are basically receiving a duplicate act count here, so then again you get to the same thing. That means you reduce the threshold value by half, congestion window by 2, and congestion window equals to threshold plus 3, and then retransmit the missing segment and go to the fast recovery phase. Okay. So yeah, this is how it works out. Okay. So I will this chapter I will end here up to TCP congestion control only. All right. So in your exams, you will get questions from the start till what has happened until today's class. Okay. So this is what your syllabus is going to be for your examination.